What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday to you. First, one of the last Sundays, I should say, before Sundays, I don't know, become all about regular season football. A couple Sundays away here with that, and a lot of hard decisions for folks to be made, or to be made by folks within the Bengals organization, but across the league, really, a lot of tough decisions. Some tough decisions have already been made across the league when you look at, the Trey Lance situation and all kinds of different things happening. But the Cincinnati Bengals had their final preseason game against the Washington Commanders last night, Saturday night. They lost again. They go winless in the preseason, 0-2-1. Not that really matters, because this is about roster construction. This is about auditions, all kinds of different things here. With the Bengals, and as they finalize their roster, decisions due by Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, I believe. So they are going to be grinding here to come up with some decisions. And I don't even think that the, quote, final roster will be the final roster. I think there's going to be some players that they get on the waiver wire, but we'll see what happens here. I'm Anthony Cosenza. Happy Sunday to you. Hopefully you're enjoying your weekend, whether right now you're, I don't know, at brunch, getting in and out of church, going on a walk or run or working out or running errands, whatever you are doing to make your Sunday productive. Happy to be joining with you. Usually we go right after games or shortly after games for post game reports, but couldn't make it work last night. So thought I'd come at you with a little Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon edition of the show. We're going to talk box score. I've got a couple little video clips. We'll talk a little bit about roster, guys who impressed and everything. So yeah, first things first, unfortunately, the field at Washington, unfortunately, continues to not do the Bengals any favors. As Dwight Patton notes, tell me about Osai. Well, he's got an ankle injury, suffered in the first quarter. Don't know how severe. I don't think quite yet. He was ruled out for the rest of the game. And this is just not good news for him or the Bengals. Hopefully it is something that is minor and that will not take away time, because this is one of those kind of breakout years for Joseph Osai. You would hope that he is poised for. And he's shown a couple of things in practice, and really, for the way, I don't want to bring this back up, but for the way the year ended for him last year, you kind of want a redemption story. You're rooting for this guy. The talent's there. I think the development's finally hitting in year 3. He already lost, I think, the full season as a rookie, which hurt the team. And so now, took some steps last year and wants to take more. So unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of wait and see with him how severe this ankle injury is. The Bengals just waived Terrell Basham, a defensive lineman edge guy. So, I think they were kind of feeling pretty good about Osai and where they were with a lot of other players there. And Basham had an injury himself that was keeping him out of a lot of practices and preseason games. So we'll have to wait and see. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a ton of updates on that quite yet. Maybe later today, or when they talk to the team early this week, they'll get more updates. Obviously, we'll see too how the roster is constructed. If he's going to go on short-term IR or something like the, IR return type of deal, I don't know. But we'll have to see a little bit more about that. But that's not good news. Hopefully it's minor and the Bengals were just playing it precautionary. But, man, that Washington field has not been kind to Bengals players, and not been kind to a lot of players around the league here. And hi, Lindsay. Always good to see Lindsay in our Cincy Jungle Facebook chat. Happy to be joining you, by the way. And a lot of different where we didn't go live on a couple of Twitter accounts. Hopefully you can still join us on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. And you can get that right down here by the Cincy Jungle logo. The show icon, you can click that to subscribe, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. Give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing on the YouTube channel. And of course, you can go subscribe to the audio channels, the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, our show, 3 and Out, Bengal Jim, and Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, and Coach Speak and Chalk Talk with the coach, Matt Minnick, who just recently celebrated a birthday. So wish him a belated happy birthday if you would. But get all of those on your favorite audio streamer. We appreciate it. We're going to hammer you with content on the podcast channel, on cincyjungle.com. And I know my guy, John Sheeran, co-hosts with me on a number of different shows. He's killing it over at A2ZSports.com too. So go check out his Bengals and AFC North reports over there as well. So yeah, this one was interesting. There's a comment here from Leo. We're going to get to some roster stuff, maybe guys who will come on to the team later who made a bid last night or throughout the preseason really to make this roster. We will see. But let's start with the game last night, and I will pull up the box score as we usually do. And then I've got a couple little fun videos and things to talk about with a couple of players and just instances in the game last night. Kind of talk about who impressed, who didn't. I've taken some notes. I rewatched the condensed version of the game again early this morning and kind of made my notes there. So here is, and I credit to ESPN. I like the way they lay out their box scores. No offense to anybody else. I just like the way that they lay this out for everybody. So, okay, you look at it, and obviously, if you're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals quarterbacks over here, Simeon's kind of the one that looks like the odd man out because of the rating of 58.8. The 55-ish% completion percentage. I mean, the lowest average 5.8 to 7 for Sinnett and Jake Browning. You had the touchdown passes from both Sinnett and Browning. Sinnett had that nice one from that went deep to Shedrick there. So that was a nice play from him. And there's one play I will bring up in just a second that I really liked the design and the execution of from Sinnett and the Bengals offense late in the game. But you look at Jake Browning, 6 of 6, 42 yards, had the touchdown, and then the rating of 135.4. Someone needed to separate themselves, and I think he did that. I will say this: whether it's Simeon, whether it's Sinnett, whether it's Browning, when I looked at this game, what I liked about it from all of these guys was the aggression, and they were trying a bit more. you kind of felt the urgency and the maybe in their head a little bit. Hey, I'm going to audition, whether it's here for a job here or somewhere else. I'm gonna kind of go for it. I'm going to put the pedal to the metal. I'm going to throw some balls downfield. Now, Simeon, I actually liked a bit more from Simeon than I'm going to consult some of my notes here. I liked a bit more from Simeon than what the numbers would indicate. But when you look at that interception and you look at the things I did not like, the interception and the low completion percentage, what I specifically didn't like that points to those indicators was there were a lot of balls forced into traffic by Simeon, and they're, none more prevalent than that interception that was in the red zone. The Bengals were moving the ball pretty well, and he forced one into double coverage there. It got tipped up and then ultimately intercepted in the end zone. There were a couple of others where he threw into really tight coverage and just tried to kind of make a play, I think, or let his receiver try and win a contested catch. There were just too many forced balls in traffic for me for Simeon this week, which is surprising because you expect that more from the young guys, not so much a guy who's been in the league for a long time. But maybe he was feeling the pressure a little bit and just wanted to kind of try and make some big plays where they had it. Again, that's kind of my takeaway there. I thought Browning looked comfortable. I thought that he was the most comfortable of all of them. I thought that he looked the most confident and was moving the ball downfield pretty well and using his targets pretty well. As you can see, 6 of 6 for 42 yards, the touchdown and the 135.4 rating. I was impressed by Sinnett, and I'll come back to this box score in just a minute, but 6 of 11, 77 and a touchdown for him. He did take a sack, tried to get that 2-point conversion to tie it in the end zone, and that was one of his incompletions, unfortunately. this was the play I thought late in the game, and I will share this with you all that I thought was pretty cool. It's and we'll maybe play it a couple of times. I thought the design was neat. I thought the execution was really really spot on. I mean, the throw could have maybe been a tiny bit better, but this was Sinet late in the game. Uh, cool fake pitch out, and then a rollback out and hits the guy for about a 14-yard gain. I mean, he was pretty wide open. The throw was a little low and behind, but I thought it was a really neat play and how it was designed. And again, here you can watch it. You got some motion, a toss, fake toss out, and a nice play out there. I think it was for 13, 14 yards to kind of kickstart the drive. Let's watch it one more time since I took the time to clip it for you guys. The fake pitch out and the nice pitch and catch for a first down there on a first down. So nice play there. I thought that was a really, really well designed play, especially when you heard all telecast about Eric Bieniemy calling plays, the Chiefs, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, Brian and Iowa, spot on. QBs finally showed some confidence. That was my takeaway. I saw a lot of more confident throws. I thought the offensive line played better. You saw the only one sack given up, not completely, the quarterbacks weren't completely harassed by pressure all night. So, I think you liked more out of the quarterbacks and the offensive line this week. And, obviously it kind of translated on the ground game as well. Yeah, Victor, I mean, you bring up a good point here. It's kind of hard to judge QB's forced passes if coaches are calling for it. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I understand that idea or that stance on that for sure. And of course, when you're Trevor Siemian, you're not out there with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, etc. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. But there were passes, at least that I noticed, where he threw it and the guy, I mean, it was blanketed coverage. There was probably at least 3 occasions, including the interception, that I thought maybe that's not the best place to go. Do you try and check down? But again, I also think, a little bit to your point, Victor, that I think these guys, this was their last game of the preseason. Time was running out, and you gotta make these throws. You gotta force the ball downfield. You gotta try and make a big play in order to secure your spot potentially on this roster. So let's go back to the box score here so we can look at some things. That was kind of my breakdown on the QBs. And before we do, I mean, we'll take one more look at it. I mean, I think we're maybe in agreement that if the Bengals are to keep one of these 3, it's probably Browning at this point. They've seemed to like the development of him. They've committed to him the past couple of years. And then, of course, you look at right here, this again, the perfect completion percentage, 6 of 6 for 42, and the touchdown. Just to put together, I think 2 solid drives. I think they were both scoring drives, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So I think he put up 10 points starting the game for the team. So you like to see that too from your backup quarterback when it's time for him to shine. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the story of the Bengals backup quarterbacks. Let's move down a minute to the running backs, because I thought there was some Chase Brown got off to a nice start. There were a couple of big plays for big losses that hurt his average. But I mean, he had a couple of nice, see a 9-yard run and a couple of solid runs. So I thought this was probably his best outing as a runner. And then I thought Jacob Sailors, again, 3 yards per carry. I thought he looked better than that yards per carry would indicate. Then you see Calvin Tyler getting some work, 4 for 16. So, I thought Chase Brown and Jacob Sailors both had some nice moments in this game, which you like. I don't know that Sailors, played his way onto the roster, but, no Chris Evans playing time, no Travion Williams playing in this one, and maybe that's an indicator one way or the other, right? I mean, maybe it's, we know that Travion had the injury and everything. So maybe they're just saying, hey, he's a lock. We're going to rest him up. Nothing to show here, and let's give Sailors an audition potentially for somebody else or the practice squad, that sort of thing. So either way, Chase Brown's going to definitely be in that mix. And, you saw a lot of shotgun runs from him, the inside zone shotgun runs. You like to kind of see in some of the ground that he was able to get, particularly early in the game. So those were some of the bright spots here on the Bengals offense. And then this was what I thought was some of the best facets of this game. And this was the Bengals pass catchers, where you're talking about the wide receivers or you're talking about tight ends, namely Tanner Hudson, who's up there with the team lead with 4 catches for 42 yards on 7 targets. But some of those were the one was the 2-point conversion that got knocked away. One was thrown over his head. So I mean, a couple of those not really on him, but 4 for 42, and we'll talk more about this when we kind of get into the roster. I really like what we've seen from this guy. From the first preseason game, did not play in the second because of the concussion that he suffered in that first preseason game, to this one. I thought he's big, he's lean, and he just seems to get open. He catches the ball fluidly. I really like this kid. And then Shedrick Jackson, as I mentioned earlier, he had the big touchdown, the 34-yarder, where he broke wide open. Busted coverage, I think, but still good to see him make a really nice play. 3 catches for 56 on 6 targets. Malachi Carter, 3 for 37. Yoshivas with the touchdown. You love that. 3 for 35 on 6 targets. There were a couple contested catch opportunities that he did not come down with, but man, that touchdown catch was a thing of beauty. It was a nice throw by Browning, because if you watch that play, I guess I should have clipped this for you, but if you watch that play, I thought that there was a kind of an arc or a bubble of coverage kind of in the right at the goal line and into the end zone a little bit. Yoshi went around and back behind that coverage, and Browning threw it kind of high and up, where he knew his tall receiver would be able to get it, and he made a nice jump up to get it, a reach up with both arms to bring it down, get both feet in. Very nice play by both quarterback and receiver on that one. And Yoshi's done everything to make this roster, so I'm pretty sure they love him. So good to see him. And then look at Charlie Jones doing some solid work. 3 catches on 3 targets, 32 yards. I thought he looked more comfortable this week as well. Trent Taylor trying to prove what he can do. 3 catches, 26 yards on 4 targets. Jones was the one fielding punts and stuff too. So I don't know where this puts Trent Taylor. I mean, Charlie Jones has got the supposed reported slight labrum tear. So, it felt like it hindered him a little bit. Plus, first preseason game, first NFL game, maybe there's a little bit of jitters, and they were playing him more outside than in the slot where they were with Jones. The last couple of games, he's played a little more slot and been far more comfortable in that role. You see he had a nice 20-yarder, and I think that was when the Bengals were in the hurry-up offense too. So nice night for the 2 rookie wide receivers there. And really, for a lot of guys that are backups or grinding for spots, guys I thought looked really, really good. Morgan had a 5-yard catch, but he also early in the game had a pass interference penalty called against the defense that was covering him that netted quite a few yards. So that's a positive play for him. He's a guy that not a lot of people are talking about, even though he's been on the active roster as a special teamer the past few years. This team loves him. He is a backup wide receiver. He comes in there and does all of the dirty work. He does a lot of blocking. He does the special teams work, and they just love him. And I know Darren Simmons loves him. So that's a guy, tough decisions to make there. Lassiter, I thought he has showed a high level of effort this entire preseason. Unfortunately, 1 catch for 6 yards on 3 targets. So, not a lot to show for it in the stat column there. But I really liked what I saw from particularly, Shedrick Jackson, of course, with the big catch. Tanner Hudson really impressed me. The 2 rookie wideouts really impressed me as well. And Morgan had that positive play that netted a defensive pass interference as a receiver there. The defense, a mixed bag. And you can see here the lone sack from, there's a couple sacks late from Carney and Jeff Gunter. Jeff Gunter also had an additional quarterback hit. Unfortunately, it ended up being a pass that was almost a touchdown. It got down to the 1-yard line. So, but still inconsistent pass rush from the early units in this game. I saw a lot of time for the quarterbacks, the Washington quarterbacks, there. So that, that kind of worried me a little bit. Obviously, backups are did some work. And Dominic Davis, what do you do here? Because you know what you have from Jay Tufele as a backup player and as a guy who was filled in for DJ Reader when he was out last year, and you can Tufele has the ability potentially to be moved around a little bit more, but what do you do here? Because you've got Josh Tupou, who is giant and is a solid backup, particularly when you play a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens. You want that size and that ability to stop the run. Dominic Davis has just shown a lot, and you see there, team leading 8 tackles. He did have the sack, did have the not so smart penalty hitting Jake Fromm out of bounds and hitting him hard as he was going out of bounds. But he's a guy, he was a game wrecker on a couple of occasions in the first game. So I don't know if he's played his way onto the roster. That's a guy we need to talk about. Tyson Anderson, rough game for the safeties and a couple of the defensive backs. I saw some nice things from DJ Ivey, but a couple of completions as well. You see 2 passes defended from Ivey, which I liked. And then, again, you look at, I want to bring this up because there's been some talk about Jordan Battle. Maybe this was a little bit of a welcome to the NFL rook type of game for Jordan Battle. And, he was on coverage of, I think, 2 of the touchdown passes. And I'm going to play one of them that you can see, you can kind of debate what's going on there. And then, he had early in the game, there was a batted ball. And he was there to kind of make, jump and make a position. I think a running back or a wide receiver just kind of pushed him out of the way pretty fiercely to get him to not make that interception, which was a heads up play by that player. I can't remember who it was on Washington who knocked him out of the way. But so it's kind of just a little bit of a rough outing for Jordan Battle. I mean, he had a couple, 5 tackles, so he was in on some plays. I want to share this, and you can look at this and present your own, I guess, conclusions from it. This was the touchdown at so play before Jeffrey Gunter hits the quarterback and steps up and makes a big throw down the left sideline. Turns out that was stopped at the 1. It looked like he dove in, stopped at the 1. So this is the very next play. Now, if you look here, I'm going to freeze it here. This is Battle back here. Lone safety back here. They're kind of stacking the box here. Obviously, they've got, a big formation here. You've got a tight end right here. You've got the running back. And this guy is going to, I think it's him. He's going to come into motion here, and he's going to go all the way out into this flat. And here's Battle alone. So my question here, and we'll play this a couple of times, is this a poor, I don't really see it necessarily as a poor play by Battle. I think he's just been put in a position where, and the play call by Washington was just great for the coverage that the Bengals were presenting. And unfortunately, Battle's probably going to get credited with being in coverage on this touchdown here. But you see him come into motion. He is late to react to the motion. That's the indictment that I see here. But we'll play it again. He's up here, and he's got a sprint to cover. And then there's also another guy that was open across the middle. We'll watch it one more time. Again, late to recognize. That's kind of the indictment there. But he was in position. It put in a position, a precarious one, that left him kind of alone there. So, we can say rough night for Jordan Battle, but that play, I don't know that fully tells the whole story there. But at any rate, I think he's going to be a very good player. The Bengals are very high on him. Lou Anarumo is very high on him, obviously. So, I'm not worried about it. I think it was just kind of a rough outing. And like I said, there's an anomaly play. Some of it is him to blame, where there was a late play recognition or late recognition of what the motion was doing. But I also look at that formation and you go, man, he's out there in the middle, one deep safety on an island out there. Tough position to be in. Really good play call, play design on the offense to kind of exploit that. So, At any rate, that was what I saw a little bit from, there's some talk about Battle struggling a little bit in this one, which I understand, that notion, but I don't think it tells the whole story. But Bengals lose 21-19. Usually as we go into the regular season, we'll look more into time of possession and dive into more, in-depth stats. Obviously with the preseason, we're kind of, just kind of taking a surface look at things, but some good, some bad, a lot of questions, with what the Bengals are going to do with their roster. Backup quarterback, what are you going to do? And we could talk about that. Actually, before we do though, I want to talk a little bit of offensive line. When I looked at this game, and granted, when I looked at the condensed replay of it, it was a little hard to kind of see because they don't show that, the play replay again, that sort of thing. So you got to kind of rewind and watch it over and over. But from just surface level stuff that I saw some good, some bad from Sharping. And granted, he's kind of playing all over the line, right? I saw more good than bad out of Deontay Smith at right tackle, which is promising. And then Trey Hill, I know they like I like the guy. I know they like his versatility. I know he's a valuable piece, a valuable interior lineman because he can swing and play and do all this stuff. But he just is, every time he plays, there seems to be a big penalty, whether it's a hold. This week, there was a face mask penalty that called back a big play. There just seems to be a lot of penalties with Trey Hill when he's out there. And I like him. I really, really do. But you can't, even when he had, what was it, against Detroit, maybe a couple of years ago, I can't remember what game it was, but he was out there and he had, in very limited snaps, 2 or 3 penalties, I think, in that game. So he just seems to be a guy that chases the yellow flag a little bit. And I love the versatility. I love the size. I love the ability. But, when he gets time, unfortunately, you can't deny that there's penalties that are called. So for me, I still like Deontay Smith is an enigma, but I still like the idea of that project. You saw some out of Adeniji. You've got tough decisions to make. And now, because you brought in a starting left tackle in Orlando Brown, you kept Jonah Williams. There is a quote, and you can see the article on Cincy Jungle. I'll pin it in the live chat for you that I believe it got published. Duke Tobin is, he remains hopeful with Jackson Carman. And Carman, again, kind of played both tackle spots. They think he's going to be a guy who can back up both tackle spots. So they are not giving up on him. I will pin this story in the live chat for you on Cincy Jungle. The quote itself, from Duke Tobin was, quote, "We believe there is a role for," it was about Carman and Charlie Jones, but "we believe there's a role for them on our football team. It's just a matter of being consistent down after down. And we still believe in him," meaning specifically on Carman. So again, I think this is a team that doesn't like to give up on high draft pick investments. That is what Jackson Carman is. He's still very young. I just think he's a left tackle. That's where he's shown. That's where he played in college and had some good film. That's where he has shown the biggest comfort level when given time in the NFL. The consistency swings are wild, wild, wild with Jackson Carman. We know that when he gets playing time. There are wow plays, and there are wow in the bad sense plays. So, I think those are some of the things going on with the backup offensive line. I think they like Sharping. Sharping showed some good things against Buffalo, had a rough outing against the Chiefs in in respective back-to-back playoff games. And then, of course, like I said, I think they view Carman as that backup swing tackle. And then what do you do? Is it Adeniji? Is it Deontay Smith? Deontay Smith, I really, really like the projection there, but he's an enigma because he's been hurt and he hasn't played much. He didn't play much in college because of the COVID stuff. And, all this kind of just mystery around this guy. So what do the Bengals do at backup offensive line? They're going to have to maximize the roster spots there. And they're going to have guys that kill 2 birds with 1 stone. be it a Ben Brown or a Trey Hill that, can back up a number of different interior line spots, be it a Max Sharping who has experience at guard. They're trying him out at center. They're doing all kinds of different things. He is a tall guy for an interior offensive lineman, by the way. And then, of course, like I said, swing backup tackle Jackson Carman, Adeniji, the devil, right? I mean, but Adeniji was a guy that was a Jim Turner guy, a Jim Turner draft pick, not a Frank Pollock draft pick. So, what do you do there? What do you do there? I think if you're asking me, I think, Sharping's on. I think they are going to commit to Deontay Smith. I think they're going to stay committed to Jackson Carman. When you're talking about the final roster, I think all of these guys are probably have played or, have enough potential, have shown enough potential in the preseason and over the past couple of years to get onto this roster. And so that's kind of the next question here. Who else could sneak onto the roster but besides some of these backup offensive linemen that we've been talking about? And what do you do at wide receiver? You probably keep 7, right? And you would think that it's the big 3, right? And then you've got a scrum between the Trents. I think they like Irwin enough to keep him around, and he has shown enough to be kept around. So there's 4. And you got 3 more spots between Stanley Morgan, the 2 rookies, Jones and Yoshi. You got Lassiter. You got a lot of other guys. You got Trent Taylor. To me, I think you keep the rookies. And so that'll give you 6. And then maybe Darren Simmons pounds the table there for Stanley Morgan. And you think that Jones can give you a bit of what Trent Taylor has given you: punt returner, slot receiver, and then you go from there. Yoshi just has shown too much development and too much potential to be given up on. And we say this every year, and I'm being a hypocrite because I make fun of the people that say this, but I think he's gotten enough hype, and I think he has shown enough this preseason that if you were to put Yoshi on the practice squad, he would get grabbed by somebody. Maybe not right away, or maybe on waivers. But if you were to stash him on the practice squad, if you were to clear waivers and get on the practice squad, I think someone at some point would grab him this year. So I don't know that those guys, those 2 draft picks that you made, I don't know that you risk getting rid of those guys given the potential and their ability to contribute as rookies. The only caveat is how healthy is Charlie Jones and that shoulder? And then do you work some magic there? Roster magic, that is. What do you do with that position group? A lot of talent, a good problem to have, but you're going to have to say goodbye to some good players or players that have been valuable to you over the past handful of years, like potentially a Stanley Morgan, a Trent Taylor. These are guys that have, done a lot of good things for you. So tough decisions there. We mentioned running back. What do you do there? One real quick before we transition, not looking good for Chuck Sizzle. Well, I mean, he caught 3 of 3 passes this week. I mean, I know he had he struggled in that first preseason game. Didn't show too much as a punt returner this week, but he's 4th round pick. I don't know that you give up on him right away. I think, if you're saying, hey, this is going to be a redshirt year for Charlie Jones, then I think you say, hey, go clean up the shoulder. Let's shut it down for the year. We'll move on. And that way we still have you around and we can figure out the rest of the wide receiver group from there. But Shedrick Jackson, again, I said this, RM's mentioning him. Good game from him. Nice play, 34-yard touchdown. You'd love to see that. So tough decisions to be made at wide receiver. And then running back. What the heck do you do at running back? And I don't know that this may be one of those positions. Of course, Mixon's the top guy. I think Chase Brown, as of now, is your number 2. Evans, you love the potential. His John and I joked about his touchdown to touch ratio in the NFL is unbelievable when he gets snaps. But again, it's that consistency thing. It's that consistency thing, and he's in his third year now, so these guys going to have to figure it out. You've got Chase Brown, like I said. I like what I saw from Sailors. I don't know that he's done enough necessarily to play himself onto the roster, but I thought he had a nice night last night. And then, Travion, how healthy is he? What's going on? I mean, he didn't play again last night. So is that just, hey, we're going to preserve? Because Zach Taylor and his coaching staff have always been pretty conservative on veteran rest. If you're injured, we're going to take it easy, that sort of thing. We're going to preserve because we need to. This is a long play. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So we need to make sure our guys who are going to be contributors are healthy. And so maybe the plan is, hey, Travion is not going to play. We're not going to risk it. Let's let him heal up and go from there. But Jason Rutherford, we need a solid punt returner. Here's the deal. It would be great to have an electric player at this point. First of all, Charlie Jones in college, go back and watch his as a return man. He was phenomenal. So that's the hope that the Bengals have with him, along with being, the potential heir apparent to Tyler Boyd in the slot. I mean, that's the hope. But he hasn't shown that quite yet. I don't know that he's 100% healthy. And you're right. While the Bengals do need, kind of that, electric guy to pop a big play on special teams, unfortunately, the de-emphasis on kickoffs has kind of made a specific spot for kick returner only a passe thing in the NFL. You got to find a hybrid guy. That's why Adam Jones was so valuable when he was on the Bengals a handful of years ago. They kind of made Brandon Tate your kick returner, but he occasionally contributed as a wide receiver as well. Unfortunately, it's just hard to not have this. Hey, my specialty, is just kick returns. You got to find a guy that's electric, or you have to, if you do have a guy who's electric, whether it's a running back or something like that, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice to say, hey, this guy's valuable on offense, a valuable defensive back, that sort of thing. But we think he is valuable here. We'll risk the potential of an injury on kick returns, punt returns, that sort of thing, because we want to pop big plays in special teams. A lot of teams aren't willing to do that. So you got to find a guy that can, give you that special teams ability while also contributing on a respective side of the ball. And that's kind of the hope with Charlie Jones. But, I think there's more to be seen here. But let's, talking about sneaking on the roster, another really tough area. I mentioned him earlier. I mentioned both of their names earlier. Jeff Gunter and Dominique Davis. Gunter has shown a lot this preseason. He had a nice night last night. He had a nice game in the opener. Same thing with Davis. So 2 great games there as well. I didn't like the penalty Davis had this last week, but he was kind of all over the field, and he is a big guy. Tufele had a great game, the first game, along with Davis. But who do you keep? How many do you keep? Gunter, going back in the past a little bit, Gunter was a guy that kind of you felt like he had a good path for himself because of the unfortunate injury and subsequent retirement of Wyatt Hubert. So you kind of felt like, okay, maybe that was his path. You've got Cam Sample around. Who knows what's going on with Joseph Osai? We talked about this at the beginning of the show. Ankle injury this week. How severe is it? I tend to believe it may be on the less severe side, and maybe they were just being precautionary with it. Just, hey, give you a couple snaps, you tweaked your ankle, let's get you out of there. But, we'll see. But tough decisions to be made there. I think you can make an argument, and I know I've on this show, for those who watch, I've favored Tufele for a couple of reasons, but I mean, Tufele has shown you what he can do in regular season games. He has had a couple of nice regular season games in spot start duty for the Bengals. Go back and check out the Saints game. Davis is a little bit of a lesser known commodity because XFL guy and bounced around. He was with the Bengals. I believe it was last spring as well. So just a lesser known commodity, but he has played his butt off to be on this team. I think you can make an argument that either guy deserved it, but that's a hard decision to make. And ultimately, I do think if you're having this conversation in that room with the coaches, the front office staff, et cetera, I think ultimately your conversation has to be, okay, which guy do you think will hold up better against the AFC North? Because that's the toughest division in football. And it's not just me saying it from a Bengals podcast perspective. I mentioned it on the news show last week. Jeffrey Chadia of NFL.com ranked all the divisions in football, and he had the AFC North as number one. The Bengals, one of the Bengals' stiffest competitions in the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens. The Pittsburgh Steelers are at least at a minimum going to be competitive. The Cleveland Browns are a bit of a wild card, pardon the pun, but I mean, they've got talent and they're scrappy and they should be in the mix a little bit there too. So this division is going to be tough. And you got Nick Chubb. You've got the multi-headed rushing attack in Baltimore, and Pittsburgh always likes to run the football. Najee Harris, and they've got another undrafted free agent that they really, really like. So, which guy's going to hold up best against those teams? Is it Davis? Is it Tufele? Can you find a way to keep both? Does it make sense to keep both? That's a conversation to have. And then, of course, you got to find ways to get after the passer. Hendrickson's been an absolute monster. Of course, you know what you can get from Sam Hubbard. Two really good edge players. Osai looking good, has the ankle injury now. And then you got to figure out Sample, Gunter. Raymond Johnson played pretty well this preseason as well. Who do you keep there? Tough decisions to be made on the defensive line. And, the secondary seems to be a bit more set. The linebackers seem to be a bit more set in terms of who's going to make the team, who we think is going to make the team. I think DJ Ivey has played himself onto a back-end roster spot. What do you do with Alan George? What do you do with Sidney Jones? What do you do in that cornerback group? And then really, the safeties, and unfortunately, it's probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve year for guys like Tyson Anderson, who missed significant time last year, Jordan Battle rookie. It's going to be the Nick Scott, Dax Hill show, I think, going forward. And then you're going to mix in some of these guys when the packages make sense. So I think we know the secondary and the linebackers a bit more than we do the trenches, the backup players in the trenches. We think, at least I think at this point, if the Bengals were to keep one of these quarterbacks that they have on their roster, it would be Browning, not Simeon. We think we know the running back positions, Mixon, Travion, Chris Evans, Chase Brown in some order, but they may surprise us there. That may be one of those groups that all of those guys make it. Someone comes available on the waiver wire, and that's the sacrificial area. I don't know. Someone gets sacrificed out of that position group. And then tough decisions at wide receiver. We know the top players, the top pieces at that depth chart. How do numbers 4 through 6 or 7 fall? That's the big question at wide receiver. And then we mentioned his name, Tanner Hudson. Arguably one of the weakest in terms of depth and questions and all that kind of stuff. Position group on the Bengals is tight end. Drew Sample's been pegged, it seems, to be kind of an H-back type of player, kind of being out of I formations or in the backfield a little bit, and then, of course, doing some tight end work, doing a lot of blocking. Irv Smith's your guy. He seems to be poised for a nice season as long as he stays healthy with the Bengals. Mitchell Wilcox just came back. Now, the team really seems to like him. Once he was healthy, they scooped him up. And then, once he was truly healthy, they got him right out to practice, that sort of thing. Tanner Hudson made a really nice case for himself. And I think, that's an element, that's a weapon in today's NFL, that length, that height, that catch radius, those nice hands. That's an element to an offense, particularly with Joe Burrow at the helm, that you got to take some pause and say, where can we fit this guy in? Where can we fit this guy in? I really was impressed with him. Really went arguably the most impressive player this preseason for the Bengals was Tanner Hudson. And granted, he didn't even play the second game. You got Yoshi, you got him, Dominique Davis, Raymond Johnson played pretty well. Tufele played well in one of the games, and Tyson Anderson had the big first game as well. So a couple guys readily popped to mind, but Tanner Hudson's at the top of that list. And really, like I said, had to leave the first game early, didn't play the second game, and then played the third game, played well. I going to be a hard guy to get rid of. And so then you've got, Devin Asiasi in that group as well. So you have to ask yourself then, okay, let's say you keep Irv Smith, Mitchell Wilcox, Drew Sample. I mean, do you only keep 3 tight ends because you're keeping 7 wide receivers? Do you go lighter on offensive line to be able to keep 3 or 4 tight ends? What does Darren Simmons think of it? Because that guy has say on the roster, and especially on the back end roster spots. That's just how it is. That's how it's always been, and he deserves it. He consistently puts out quality special teams units every single year, so he deserves his say on some of these guys. And I think that's where some of the guys we are not talking about so much, your Stanley Morgans, may sneak onto the roster, and people go, well, how did he make it over as Shedrick Jackson? How did he make it over a Kwame Lassiter, a Trent Taylor? Well, it's because Darren Simmons knows what Stanley Morgan brings. Zach Taylor knows what Stanley Morgan's means to that wide receiver room and that locker room because of his knack for doing the dirty work. And that's what may be keeping him on. Again, I don't think when we see the final roster in a couple of days here, I would put quotes around that final 53-man roster, because this team, I don't have it in front of me, but I know at least 2 of the past 4 seasons with Zach Taylor, probably more. I'd have to go back. But I remember, that first year, Samaje Perine was a waiver wire pickup. And he was on, I remember going to the Seattle Seahawks versus Bengals game in Seattle and seeing Samaje Perine on kickoff coverage. That was a guy right there, waiver wire, boom. Final 53 was set, and then it wasn't set because they brought in a guy like Samaje Perine that they really liked. Then, last year, Asiasi, Tufele. So they are willing to tweak what they deem the final roster with a player or 2, and I would not be surprised, even though they'll be back in the waiver wire order. Would not be surprised if the Bengals make another move there to truly finalize their roster. Brandon Houdair 85. I'm so glad the preseason is over with. Real football coming. While I agree with you, don't tell that to John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has something to say about preseason football, so don't tell that to him. We're going to get on out of here, talking a little roster, talking about the Bengals preseason loss. They fall to 0-2-1 in the preseason. I guess you kind of just shrug and go, okay, well, on to the regular season, on to the final roster here. And we will break down the final roster when it is announced. We'll go through some news and notes. We'll probably hold off. We'll do our news and notes and roster show probably on Tuesday, just as I think about it now, because that's where the bulk of a lot of news is going to come. I did want to get to this. There was one question earlier in the show. Let me see if I can find it. It was about Will Greer from Dallas. Leo Sean, I think it was. Let me see. Yeah. In our Facebook chat. What about the Dallas quarterback that's getting cut? Well, of course, we know now. I mentioned at the beginning, Trey Lance now backing up Dak Prescott in Dallas. Say that 3 times fast. Will Greer, a guy that, some Bengals fans liked coming out of the draft a couple of years ago. Will Greer is going to be the odd man out, and he balled out. I think he had, 3 or 4 total touchdowns, 200-plus yards passing. He looked really, really good last night. That could be, especially with this quarterback rule, this new rostered quarterback rule where you can kind of keep a third guy on there. Maybe maybe that's a guy you snag and try and develop behind a Browning, behind a Simeon, that sort of thing. Maybe they like Reed Sinnett more than we think. You saw that nice little clip, that nifty play early in the game, late in the game yesterday, that he kind of made that nice fake pitch and rollout. Maybe they like him more than we know. I mean, he was the guy that was targeted after Burrow went down. There's all these other big names out there, and that was the guy they went after. So Will Greer potentially, if the Bengals especially go, pretty light at quarterback and keep only one, that may be a guy that you look at. He may get some attention now, extra attention after that performance yesterday. But again, running back, maybe even tight end off the waiver wire. And then, potentially backup offensive lineman. Maybe that's where they look to. But a lot of tough decisions to be made. Wide receiver, as I said, the trenches, offensive, defensive line. Tight end, you've got some questions to answer there. And then, of course, backup quarterbacks. What do you do with the backup running backs, that sort of thing? So some questions to be answered. They will be answered later this week. Either way, the Bengals roster looks to be in pretty good shape. They seem to be pretty dang healthy. Joseph Ossai aside, we'll have to see more about that, and Joe Burrow aside, but hopefully he's getting closer to returning to practice. And no real significant snaps for the starters. I don't know if people are freaking out about that this year, or how they're feeling, but no real significant snaps for the Bengals starters on either side of the ball this preseason. And I think that kind of fell away also with the Burrow injury. We'll see, but hopefully he returns back to practice. Hopefully Ossai returns back to practice pretty soon, and we'll have some more answers about the roster in a couple of days. Like I said, we'll be breaking that down. We'll be breaking down the news and some notable cuts and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, John and I will be back for our standard Wednesday show. We'll start ramping up the listener questions live at the end of the week. So you want to submit. You don't have to wait till Friday, by the way. If you want questions to be submitted, we'll take a look at them. And, of course, the YouTube super chats that more often than not go to a specific Bengals player or someone associated with the Bengals charity. If you want to give us one of those, we appreciate that. And keep it to our YouTube channel. Keep it to CincyJungle.com. Keep it to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. And we'll keep breaking down stuff. We'll be hammering you with content, like I said, and bringing you all kinds of different stuff. I'm Anthony Cosenza. Appreciate you all joining me on your Sunday for this live broadcast. Appreciate you tuning in after the fact. I know you got a lot of stuff, potentially family, friends, errands, I don't know, all kinds of different stuff on your Sunday, but I appreciate you hanging out with me for about an hour, talking some Bengals football. Now we're going to be talking about real Bengals football just around the corner. Appreciate you all. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll be back this week with a lot more content. By the way, go check out on our YouTube channel. We had a fun little video on a best Bengals villain, Joey Porter. Go check that out. Kind of a fun one, rehashing the Bengals history with Joey Porter. And oh, by the way, it's taken another turn with his son on the Steelers now. So go check that out. Kind of a fun video, but we'll be doing more of that and all kinds of different things going forward. Take care. Have a good Sunday.